All right, joining us now, of course, she is entering her 24th season on top there, and of course, in charge of the program there at Rocky Top there. Of course, Tennessee volunteer head coach Karen Weekly, fresh off back to back SEC championships. The resume speaks for itself. Hall of Famer Karen Weekly joining us here on In the Circle. How you doing, Coach?
Doing great. How about you, Eric?
That's good. You've had won back-to-back SEC championships in the regular season the last 2 years, which is not easy to do in the best conference in the sport. Uh, when you reflect on that 2 year run there, this last 2 years, what comes to mind of getting over the top in the SEC? You've had a World Series run during that 2 year run, but describe this 2 year run here that you've had.
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is players, and when I say players, it's not just talent, it's people who not only are they talented, but really high character in terms of the commitment to our core values, the commitment to work ethic, just uber competitors, just really the total package. And, we had a lot of them in that 2 year run that, really helped shape the culture of this program. And I think that's what allows you to go into a second year with those expectations and then continue those expectations. Same expectations are still here now. And you just see the players passing those down and younger players accepting the torch that they're passing and ready to go out and to win. And, they're not hoping to win, they're expecting to win. And this conference can beat you up pretty hard. I think the second thing is pitching. You're not going to win a conference championship in a conference like the SEC without having deep pitching. A 3 game series is pretty tough, and if you've just got one that is an ace for you, you might guarantee yourself one win a weekend. But to be able to win enough series to win regular season championships, you've got to be deep in the circle, and we've been very, very fortunate in that respect.
You look at obviously this past year, the senior class that you had this last year now that you have to replace, and you don't replace some of them and what they brought to the table. But first, describe that senior class that you're now that this group now has to follow that senior group and what the legacy they've had for Tennessee softball.
Yeah, an amazing class. And what's really kind of unique about it is there's some 5 year players in there with, Kiki got her COVID year, but there's 4 year players in terms of all 4 years of eligibility were here at Tennessee. There's 2 year players in there, where they transferred in as juniors and maybe were able to take advantage of that COVID year. So you have this mix. They didn't all play their entire 4 years together, but the mark they left on this program is really unbelievable. And you get somebody like Peyton Gottschall or Julia Kutswainopoulos come in for 2 years, and you wish you'd coached them for 4, but the impact they made in those 2 years was like having a 4 year player. And again, just really solid people. To win, you have to have good people, and then you have to make sure that, no one's pulling the cart in a different direction. And that group of young women, they were not going to allow that to happen. They really kept our team focused on our mission and everybody in line.
You don't replace a player like a Kiki Malloy, for example, and what she brought. I know that from talking to many coaches. You never replace them, but life moves on. When they move on, how do you go ahead and move forward? And obviously, I know the answer is the obvious: recruiting. You have another top 5 freshman class coming in that's going to be a part of this year's team. But how do you go in thinking, all right, who's taking the quote Kiki Malloy spot there? Or do you even, is it are you really saying, let's see what we have and adapt to what we have? Are you looking for certain features in certain athletes? How do you find the next great athlete? Because you've done that.
Well, I think what's so special about Kiki, coaches always say, when your best player is also your hardest worker, you got a pretty good thing going. And that's true for Kiki Malloy. Most talented player, super hard worker, super competitive, and willing to step up and lead. From the day she set foot on this campus as a freshman, Kiki didn't hold back, but she had the respect of her teammates because she was never going to ask them or expect them or push them to do something that she didn't also do. So you don't replace that. I think she's a generational type of player. A lot of times you get the talent, but maybe not the courage to lead, right? Or you get the uber competitive leader, maybe not quite as talented. So I think when you have somebody like Kiki, you just count your blessings and you cherish every single day with her. I think we got really, really lucky in the portal in picking up Kinsey Fiedler. And when I say lucky, I knew she was a good player. I knew she could do lots of different things, had played infield, had played outfield. But boy, she is locked down center field for us. She's locked down the leadoff spot for us. And I think going into this season, that was one of the big questions. Who's going to play center? Who's going to bat leadoff? And be that spark plug at the top of the order where Kiki was a fixture for 4 years. And Kinsey's done a really, really nice job. I'm not comparing her to Kiki, never will compare her to Kiki. She's a different type of player, but she's really, really dynamic. So I'm really excited about her this season.
It sounds like she was even a better fit on your team than you even thought when you've got her to come here. You've
Well,
learned since you've learned in the fall.
that's what I mean by lucky,
Yeah,
like not lucky in the sense that I didn't think we had a lot to offer in the recruiting process. But a player like that, a lot of people wanted her.
yeah.
But yes, very fortunate that I had no idea. And really, I just hadn't watched her because Kinsey's one of those players that went off the board pretty young. And so, I didn't spend a lot of time watching her when she was in high school, knew her by reputation, knew that people had really good things to say about her, but didn't realize that how well her skill set was going to fit in that leadoff spot. I think she's going to be just a doubles machine for us. I think she's got a shot, to set some records with triples because she's just got the speed to go with the ability to go gap to gap. So yes, that's I did not know quite what we were getting, and it's more than I could have expected.
Let's talk a little bit about, as you mentioned, this year's team. Obviously, Kinsey will be a big factor there in the offensive side and defense. You just brought up defense. That's a big factor in your team's as well, success on there. How does the defense look to you right now? I know there's still some questions that you probably still have to have answered, but overall, that was the underestimated thing about your teams the last few years is not only good offense pitching, but defense, great plays around. How does it look right now to you?
Yeah, I thought we were a really good defensive team these last couple of years, and it's something we work really hard on. It's a part of the game that I'm really passionate about, and I think it does get overlooked when you're pitching so good and you're putting up some good numbers offensively. But defense and pitching wins championships, right? Offense sells the tickets. Defense, which includes pitching, is going to win the games. I think we're going to be really solid. I think. Boo Gibson returns for us, and she's going to play third. Bella Faw, really, really good defensive shortstop. We lost her for 7 of the 8 weeks of SEC play to a broken foot. And by the time she came back, we're in the postseason. And it's probably just a little too late. You don't have time to kind of get your feet under you again. Laura Mueller returns, who did a fantastic job for us at shortstop last year. And over on the other side, at first base, we've got some pretty good competition going on over there. Taylor Panel, we've played her quite a bit there this fall, brought her in from the outfield. She's a trained infielder, played a lot of, third base growing up. She's doing a really nice job for us there. She'll find herself in the lineup in one of those spots, right field or first base. So, but we have a lot of options too at first base. Amaya Doyle is a really nice freshman, one of the top recruits in the country. Super fortunate to get her, big bat. And I think with freshmen, a lot of times it's just learning some of the nuances of the skills it requires to play defense, the footwork and the arm slots and transitions and things like that. They have the talent, but then just kind of learning how to refine that skill set to play defense really efficiently.
Now, pitching wise, of course, Pickens and Gottschall, you mentioned, where's the 1-2 punch? 1A, 1B carried you last year. Looking on paper this year, it looks like you actually have more depth, though, pitching wise, compared to what you had last year. You didn't have as many arms as you do on the roster this year. Do you feel that way? I know in the back end you got some young freshmen, but as I saw in the fall, you threw them right there, so you feel confident in you that they're going to contribute.
Yeah, you've done your homework for sure. I think that's one of the things I've been telling people. This might be the deepest pitching staff we've had at Tennessee. Because you go back, 10, 15 years ago, we had great pitching, but that was still the era where you could get by with, two, right? And even back to the Abbott days, sometimes you're throwing the same one a lot. Now you need the depth. And I think this could be, in this last probably 8-year period, 10-year period, maybe the deepest pitching staff we've had. And things obviously start with Carlin Pickens. What's cool about Carlin is Carlin's not one to rest on her success or feel like I can just show up the same. She also understands that when you're that good, to get better is incremental, but it's like the amount of work you have to do to get incrementally better is a lot. And she embraces that, and she wants to do that work to make herself just a little bit better, because people game plan for you, especially when you're one of the best. They're really going to lock you in. We saw that a couple times last year. So she knows she has to tweak her game every year to give people something maybe they didn't expect to see. I think Sage Marjeko is a huge pickup for us. Huge. I don't think her numbers last year reflect just how gifted she is. And the key for her is to get that walk number down, because Sage has some really, really good stuff, and is that rare pitcher who can go 4 different directions effectively. A lot of pitchers think they can throw all those pitches, but the ball doesn't really spin quite the way they need it to, and maybe they don't have the break on one of them. She reminds me a lot of Ellen Renfro in that respect, somebody that can legit throw 5+ pitches. So I'm real excited about her, and the key for her is just, hey, trust what you have, because your stuff is really difficult to square up. So let's not give that opponent, free passes trying to be too fine with everything. I think Erin Newer is going to be a really good pitcher. We started her in the fall game up at Kentucky, knowing it was going to be 1,500 people there. Halloween festival going on. Just you really had the atmosphere of an SEC spring game. And I thought that would be really good for her to get out there and kind of, go through the nerves that are going to come and get those worked out. And she did a really nice job, really nice job. And she's another one who understands pitching and can attack hitters in a lot of different ways. Peyton Tanner, another good freshman she's kind of just a bulldog. She's a competitor. Sometimes you watch and you're like, she's got some things she's doing well, but then she's just determined. Like, she's going to find a way to beat you, and she's not going to back down. And then Charlie Orsini, she's improved too. She does a nice job with her off speed and working down in the zone. So we have a lot of options. And the cool thing is, they're all different, and I know sometimes coaches say that a lot, and sometimes you don't truly have a lot of different looks, but they really are. And that's going to help us from a pitching standpoint, but it's also helped us already from a hitting standpoint. So we've gone live a lot this fall. And for our hitters to be able to have to adjust, hey, your first at bats against Pickens, throwing 75, with a crazy changeup. Oh, and now here comes Sage, and the ball's just like spinning, and you're like, oh, it's there, then it's not, and then you got to go to Charlie, who's maybe just crushing it down. And so it's been good for our hitters to have to make those adjustments quickly.
Very good. You mentioned your offense. Of course, you've got a new assistant that's leading the offense, and Craig Snider, well-respected offensive hitting coach in the sport, taking over for Chris Malvo. Chris Malvo and his wife now co-head coaches at Auburn. I want to start with that. The Malvos getting the job at Auburn. What was your reaction to that? I know that obviously you were a part of that, but they're kind of following the footsteps in a lot of ways that you and Ralph have the blueprint for.
Yeah, it's crazy. Somebody told me not too long ago that Tennessee softball has had a husband and wife on staff every year since 2001. And it's like, whoa, we didn't set out to, it wasn't by design, right? I mean, obviously Ralph and I were here for 20 years together, but then when, Ralph retired and I'm looking for a hitting coach and I had another slot open, I didn't go out looking for a husband and wife, but I thought they were the 2 best people I could find. And then this go around kind of happened the same way. Um, so yeah, I'm really proud of them, really happy for them. I think they're going to do a great job down there. I think, when you're a husband and wife team and you're coaching together and you want to continue to do that, there's not a lot of places that will welcome that, and I think, there's some people who are just like, no, not even going to consider it. So when you get that opportunity, you got to take it. And when you have that opportunity in the SEC, that's kind of a no-brainer. So really happy for them. I think they both bring some really cool things to the table, and I think that's probably what Auburn saw. Much like Tennessee saw in 2001 with me and Ralph. Ralph always says, I probably wouldn't have got the job without you, and you wouldn't have got it without me. But together they saw the complete package. So that's pretty cool.
I'm curious. It's not even just specific to the Malvos or even Craig and Stephanie, which we'll talk about shortly. But do you get it? People seek out your advice across the sport from maybe people, husband and wives that are coaching in the same staffs about how to make it work, because it is a delicate situation.
It is, and I get asked that question a lot from fellow coaches in the business. So, I kind of joked that at the convention we should probably do like a session on it, right? Because it's happening more and more, and a lot of times it happens at some of the smaller schools or D2s, D3s, where like for Ralph and I started at Chattanooga, we didn't have the funding for a full complement of coaches. Well, I was a professor at Chattanooga, full-time faculty teaching business law, but I didn't have any afternoon classes. So it was easy for me to go out and help, and I loved it, and I'd played in college, so it was something obviously I was passionate about. And it was the one thing when I decided to go the law route that I was like, I might miss coaching. What gave me the opportunity to do it? So, I always kind of kid Ralph and say, you're the best free assistant you've ever had. But I think that's where it stems from. It's like, if a school doesn't have the funding for a coach, but a spouse has the time and the knowledge and the willingness, then it just sort of happens. But yeah, we get asked a lot, especially at the convention. People come up and say, hey, we're a husband and wife team trying to figure this thing out. What advice do you have?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's not even just the softball. I mean, I know in soccer there are similar situations as well, and they've brought you and Ralph up as examples, as the standard, a model, which is kind of unique. I mean, have you ever thought of that? That you and Ralph has sort of been like role models for a lot of coaches in different variety of sports in standpoint.
Well, every once in a while, someone will tell me that. But yeah, it's not something I think about a lot. And I when they do, I say, "Well, you don't live with us." But I mean, here's the thing about husband and wife co-head coaching. I wouldn't trade it for the world because those 20 years we got to experience some really, really cool things together, and we got to build something together, and that's awesome. I think that it has its challenges because I don't care who it is. When you're with someone 24/7, that's going to present challenges. And I don't know that we were the best at, turning off softball when we got home because one of us was always thinking about something and then wanting to bounce it off the other person. But I think we realized that we had to be better at kind of finding those separate spaces, right? Like something that I was going to do, or maybe a hobby or time spent elsewhere, and he's going to spend time elsewhere because it's not easy to be together 24/7. But I always ask myself, would I want it any other way? And the answer was emphatically no, no. There was so much more joy and reward out of doing that together than any of the downfalls.
No doubt, and we'll see how the Malvos do there. Did you tease them a little bit? Like, did you have to get the job in the same conference? Like, like, come on, like, but it's interesting. I mean, so they move on to Auburn, so now you've got to find a way to replace them. So take us through that process and how you ended up going with Craig, who was a head coach at the time at Texas Tech, and of course then Stephanie Sanders, who's obviously with Craig, comes on board as well.
Yeah, so it was interesting because, because of our success these last couple years, I immediately was kind of inundated with people across the country and really, really good qualified names. And so it was kind of a crazy, like, I don't even remember sleeping those 3 or 4 days after it was official. And, and then you're in recruiting and, you're trying to recruit portal kids. And so then it's like, okay, if I don't know who the hitting coach is going to be, and everything's just like warp speed. But Craig and Chris are very good friends. They were in each other's wedding. And so Chris reached out to me the day that it was official. He called and said, hey, I think Craig might be interested in this. I'm not sure that, head coaching is what he, really wants to do for the long term. And he'd been a head coach at Texas Tech for 2 years. And then Craig is from Kentucky, actually just across the border north of Nashville. So really, really close. His family's like 3 hours away from here. Stephanie is from Lima, Ohio. So this was a move that got them closer to family. But as I sat down and talked to them, and actually that was kind of funny how that happened, because after, Chris mentioned that, got connected with Craig and we were talking, well, they were in Lima because they were getting married in about 8, 9 days from then. So they were up at Stephanie's getting all the arrangements and everything done for the wedding, kind of all the last minute stuff, because they were getting married at her house in the backyard there. And so I said, well, how soon can you get down here? And they said, we can be there tomorrow. And they drove down and, had to take a day away from wedding preparations. And we just kind of, spent sort of a marathon, day, evening, next morning together, and just a lot of conversation about philosophies and, kind of what they were looking for, what I was looking for. And it just worked because, Craig obviously is one of the more respected hitting coaches in our business and has a track record to back that up. And then, I made some calls to people who'd worked with Stephanie, and it was sort of like when I made calls to people who'd worked with Kate, like I couldn't hear enough good things, and people I really respected that just gave her the highest recommendation. And she brings a coaching experience background that was the things we needed. She was a catcher growing up. She's worked with catchers. She's worked with outfield, and she can assist with the hitting. And that was a lot of the things that we had Kate Malvo doing. So, their experiences, skill set really fit neatly. And then I just felt really good about who they were as people, their recruiting ability, their coaching ability, and all the references I got.
Weddings, though, how about that? Weddings helping you find coaches. I mean, that's a new one
Yeah.
there. That's the small world there. How has that adjustment gone with Craig taking over, in particular the offense, with especially the returning players? Has it been smooth? Because obviously he has his own style, different probably than Chris does, and et cetera. But at the same time, he knows what he's doing. So what has that transition been like?
Yeah, I think anytime you bring in a new coach, especially, if it's hitting or pitching, right, it's going to be an adjustment because people have their philosophies. But I think what's made it pretty smooth is I think Craig, his personality is, I'm going to watch what you do. I'm not going to come in and say, all right, we're doing it this way, this way, this way, this way. He's really watched what our players do. He communicates really well, listens to, what they say, talk about with their swing and their approach. And I would say the difference, I guess, is Chris is going to start with mechanics and work forward. Craig's going to start with end result approach, kind of the cat and mouse mental game with the pitcher, leveraging counts, that kind of thing. Those things that happen like in the at bat, and work backward from there. And so they're both trying to achieve the same thing. They just start at different points, and the path to get there is a little bit different. But I think our players have really adapted well to that.
I know in the past you've told me that every year every team's different, and that sometimes new leaders step in, blossom to being leaders, whereas and other leaders that have been leaders stay on, but et cetera. But you find new leaders every year. Where is the leadership right now with this particular team? Is it evolving? Do you have some leaders established? What are you seeing from your leadership role from your players?
Yeah, well, we just established our leadership council and kind of took the fall to just sort of see who had the courage to step up and act in certain situations, who seems to have, the respect of their teammates, just kind of evaluating all those things. We did the program this fall. That tells us a lot about who our leaders are, who our good teammates are. And so, Boo Gibson, she's been a leader for us. She was the only, I think, holdover from our leadership council last year because so many of our leaders on our team last year just happened to be seniors. I'm not a person who believes it has to be seniors. I think you can come in as a freshman and be a leader. And just if you have the courage to do it and you're completely bought into the program's mission and core values. So, we have kind of a big leadership council, but for me, it's not like these are the only people that can lead or captains per se. It's that communication liaison with the coaches. And I want to make sure that, on our council, everybody in that room is touching, everybody on our team in some way, shape, or form. So that's why sometimes it can be a little big, but Boo Gibson for sure, Sophia Nugent, our catcher returning, Laura Mueller has really stepped up, and that was one of her goals coming into this year was to be a better leader for us. Kinsey Fiedler honestly came in right away. I could see the leadership qualities in the recruiting process, and I told her, I said, "You've only got 1 year with us. Don't waste any time trying to just test the waters and ease into things. You don't have that kind of time, and we need the benefit of your leadership." So she's done a really good job asserting herself. Katie Taylor, who's been in this program for 4 years, and has played quite a bit her sophomore year, didn't play as much last year, but does a great job and has a ton of respect from her teammates. And then Carlin Pickens. She's really emerged and stepped up as kind of the leader of that bullpen. And then the last one is one of our freshmen, Amaya Doyle. Yeah, she's not afraid to say what she thinks, and she backs it up.
How many of the freshmen, you talked about the pitchers, how many do you expect maybe to contribute on the offensive side or maybe, base running to go along with some of the returners back offensively? Not to mention you've added Aubrey Barnhart from Texas Tech, comes
Mhm.
over as a bat as well. So talk about the offensive side and the identity you anticipate this year.
I think we're going to be a much more versatile team in terms of the ability to score runs in a lot of ways. So the last couple of years, we've been more, just kind of get a couple on and we hit a long ball, and it's worked for us. But we didn't have a lot of left-handed hitting, and we didn't have a lot of speed. And when you think about Tennessee, that's kind of what people think about is, just creating some chaos on the bases. And I think we're gonna get back to being a team like that, we're gonna just get runners in position to score on an infield ground out, to run some run and bunts, to, use the bunt at different times. And, I'm not big on sack bunts all the time, but there's a time and a place for it. We showed this fall that we're doing that pretty well. Use some short game kids. And I think that's where talk about some freshmen. Savia Morgan is a freshman for us. I think people are going to see a lot of her. She's really fast, dynamic, runs the bases, along the lines of a Kiki Malloy. The speed plus just the instincts, and the left-handed slap game. I think she'll see a lot of time. I think Zoe Schuler is a hurdles champion out of North Carolina. Probably not quite ready to get in that lineup, but somebody who can win games for us with her legs. She can definitely come in and run and make some cool things happen. Emma Clark is a freshman who is kind of our utility player at just about every position in the infield, including catcher. And I always tell the utility player, you may not have a defined spot when the season starts, but you'll be surprised just how things seem to fall with illness and injury and whatever it might be. And, you keep working, you may be in there. It may not be the same spot all the time, but she's really, really pushing for playing time. And she's also got some really cool leadership qualities about her as well.
A lot of coaches told me that they want the versatility in offense because that's the difference in postseason softball. Like for all the talk about the power game and and the offense explosions, when it gets to postseason, you're going to see everybody's best pitchers, and you need to find the variety of ways to scratch out a run, as we saw in your super regional against Alabama is an example of that with the great pitching from both sides and into the postseason World Series. We see that every year.
Yeah, I think that was the key against Alabama, honestly, is because we pitched really well. We just didn't have some different ways to score when we needed to find them. And that's something you got to train all year too. It's not just going to show up at those moments when you really need it. And I think, players, hitters, offensive weapons, there's a freedom they play with when they know I've got more than one way to accomplish a task. And I've got more tools in my tool belt. And I think we're going to be that kind of team where, as an offense, we're going to feel like we got a lot of tools. And as individual players, we're going to feel that way as well.
By the way, you'd be proud of me. I keep harping on the fact that every year it seems like you get paired up with an SEC team in the Supers. I brought it up vocally first. I criticized it right off the bat. So we've had this talk a million times before. We're not going to bring it up again, but I am on your behalf, been promoting. Please stop doing that. I don't know if it will. Don't think it's been successful, Coach. May not with the expanded SEC, but
Well,
I got your
yeah,
corner. Yeah, it's going to be harder now.
yeah, it's going to be even harder to avoid those matchups. And, it's crazy because every year it's happened. I'm like, you just move a team one slot, and you've got, a non-conference matchup. I've asked the committee, they swear that they don't look at it. It's like they're literally just looking at resumes, with the team name blacked out, and that's where they line up. And then once they line up that way, they're not gonna change them to avoid those matchups because that's not one of their criteria. It is what it is. You still got to show up. You got to play ball at the right time. You got to be the best team at the right time.
They've given me that same answer, by the way. So they're not
Yeah.
just that because I've asked about that question. It drives me nuts. I agree with you. When I do projections, I usually kind of like it's weird because on the one hand, my instincts are let's just I'm going to adjust this so that I avoid conference matches, but I know they don't do that. So I'm
Right.
almost doing a disservice to myself and the people that read my bracketology because I'm actually misleading them because there are probably going to be. It's nuts.
Yeah.
Do you think? Because one thing the committee people have brought up to me is with the size of this SEC now, with Oklahoma and Texas coming in, that down the road there could be conversations about whether they will allow teams in the same conference to be in the same regional down the road. That could be a conversation that starts taking place in future conventions. Have you heard any of that conversation? Because the chances are the SEC maybe some years might get everybody in, which makes it hard from a regional standpoint.
Yes, I've heard that exact same thing, that with these conference realignment and the mega conferences, us and the Big Ten, both pretty big now, you may not be able to avoid that. Now, obviously we've had the most teams getting in, 12 out of 13, 13 out of 13, and now that number goes to 15. And, the two we brought in, I think everybody expects them to be in the postseason.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're looking at 14, 15 teams. It's not going to happen this year. They haven't changed the criteria, but going forward, it wouldn't surprise me if they don't protect conferences.
You obviously are not affected by them coming to this conference with your non-conference schedule. You're going to open the season at the NFCA Leadoff Classic, which I've had people that have been going to that tournament and run that tournament. They're thinking this could be one of the most exciting tournaments in the history of that tournament. Your opener against Nebraska is going to get a lot of attention for perhaps the matchups in the circle. That's a whole other story. But you're also facing other good teams in that tournament. You're going to Mary Nutter. And what blows me away, you've got some of the best midweeks of the entire season that people have circled. You've got Duke coming to your place. You're playing Clemson. Just tell me about your philosophy from a non-conference scheduling standpoint, because it could be easy for some teams to say, "Hey, we're in the SEC. Let's take it easy here," but you're not taking it easy at all.
No, and we never do. I think we learned the hard way back in the Monica Abbott days, when we were ranked number one in the country all year and got seeded seventh. And we were like, what? And the committee said, well, your non-conference schedule. I was like, we're in this conference that's absolutely ridiculous. And he said, that doesn't matter. You don't control your conference schedule. Nobody does. You control your non-conference. Which, whether I agree with that or not, that seems to continue to be a prevailing criteria for the committee. So they don't care that you play 24 SEC matchups against other teams going to regionals. They want to see you go out in non-conference and schedule well. And so I think it's a constant balancing act because, if you schedule too many heavy hitters, then you're going to flirt with the 500 mark. And so you have to make sure that you stay above that. And I think that's bit some of our conference members. in the rear end in the past. But yeah, we're going to go out and schedule well. And, fortunately, we've got some really good ACC programs that are within driving distance. We went down to Clemson last year. We went over to Duke in fall ball a year ago, and we've kind of agreed. We played Virginia Tech. We've done a home and home with them. And I think they, at the same time, know, hey, we've got to improve our non-conference schedule. So it's kind of a win-win for us.
I want to ask you about a player that has accomplished a lot. She's got a lot of accolades, and yet I kind of feel she's one of the most underrated players in the country. That's McKenna Gibson. Tell me about her, because I don't know. I just feel that way. Maybe I don't know, but I know she's got a lot of accolades and stuff. But yet, I don't feel like she gets talked about among the when people bring up best players in the country.
I think you're exactly right. She's our steady Eddie. And sometimes those players that, don't do anything really flashy, they just are super consistent, go unnoticed. And that's Boo. We call her nickname's Boo. So I think Boo Gibson just sounds like a ball player. So that's what we call her. But she is, she's the type you're going to put on a video for everything. I mean, her defensive fundamentals are off the charts because she's so intentional about every rep she does. Super coachable, holds her teammates accountable, kind of a quiet leader. Boo's not going to be the one that's, jumping around and really outwardly expressive, but she's that one that's like, all right, she's our rock. She's our rock. And everybody gravitates to that. I love coaching her, just love coaching her. It's so cool to coach young women who really come into college and view this not just as an opportunity to develop as players, but to develop as people. And that's what Boo's done. She's taken advantage of everything Tennessee has to offer. She's found a relationship with God here and is really invested in growing her faith and is one of the leaders in our 110, which is kind of our version of FCA. And it's just so cool to sit down and talk to her about, her growth as a human being and how proud she is of that and how important that is to her.
Couple more things before I let you go. Obviously, big year for Tennessee baseball. They won a national title this past year, and Tony Vitello, when he's been interviewed, he has brought you up as one of the first people he brings up as far as people that have supported him a lot and embraced him since he's been at Tennessee. I think there was footage where either when they're about to go to the World Series or when they got back, that you were one of the first people there to salute them and congratulate them there. Just talk about that bond there with the baseball and the softball there, and you've given him that support, because he said, like, he compared you and Pat Summitt as these big time human beings in Tennessee, and he's learned about that, and he's really appreciated your support.
Well, I don't know that I deserve to be put in the same sentence with Pat, but Tony is a fantastic guy. Obviously a tremendous coach. People ask me all the time, what's he like? And I'm like, he is the most down to earth, just cool dude you'll ever be around. The year before, we both go to the World Series, and neither of us win it. He's there as soon as we get off our bus when we come home. Ralph and I are there as soon as he gets off his bus when he comes home. We share facility needs. Anytime we want to use the baseball facility for anything camp wise, he's like, yeah, here's my code, go for it. Knock yourself out. The whole staff is just really, really good people. We talk recruiting. Hey, who do you have in? Who do you have in? I've met a lot of his recruits down on the football sidelines. He's met all. You can imagine every one of the girls that comes here wants a picture with Tony Vitello. Yeah, he's always down on the sidelines, and so we connect over a lot of different things. Yeah, it's been a great relationship.
That was a run last year where it seemed like you and baseball and softball were taking turns hosting big series and then postseason, and the atmospheres on television at both are incredible. Do you all feed each other, like, from that standpoint? Because you've seen them at baseball, how great atmosphere. It seems like you all feed off each other from a success on the field and just excitement standpoint.
I think everybody at Tennessee does. I mean, our athletic director has coined the hashtag everything school, and it's not a hashtag. It is true. Every single sport here. Last year, every one of our sports made postseason. I mean, that's unheard of. We've won the SEC All Sports Trophy 3 years running, and Danny White's only been here 3.5 years. Winning breeds winning. And I've been here for 24 years. And, there was a time when Ralph and I first got here that everybody was winning but softball. So it was like, all right, let's get our rear in gear. And then, when you can walk into your dining hall and as an athlete, you sit down and hey, there's a national champion to your right. There's an Olympic champion to your left. I mean, it's as iron forges iron, we forge one another. When you are surrounded by competitive people who are continually striving to be the best at what they do, yeah, you might play different sports, but the skill set's the same when it comes to that character piece and figuring out how to maximize your potential. So yeah, we do feed off each other. Softball, baseball, tennis, golf, football, swimming and diving, track and field, you name it. We're collaborating, and nobody wants to be the one that's dragging it down, right? We all want to make sure that we do our part to contribute to those SEC All Sports trophies. And our athletic director gives us the resources to win. And that's all you can ask for as a coach. So it's a really, really cool environment here. The best it's ever been since I've been coaching. And I don't see anything else that rivals it.
That's incredible. And the alums, the passion they have. I mean, obviously, Peyton Manning's everywhere supporting Tennessee. He was at the World Series. Like the Todd Heltons who got to the World Series. I mean, Monica Abbott. You asked me earlier about like doing the homework on the picture. I texted her because she's been doing broadcasting stuff for the last year. And then when I told her I was going to talk to you, she's like, bring up those freshmen. I love that freshman class. He's coming in. Like you can just sense that passion. They still have it for the programs in the respective sports in the school, even though they've been removed from it.
Oh, no doubt. We just had our alumni event a week ago, 2 weeks. Yeah, a week ago. And you can see it. They are so proud. They are so proud to be Vols. They're so proud to be Lady Vols. They're so proud of what softball's doing, but they're proud of everything that this school represents.
Last thing, as you get, before you know it, you'll be in Clearwater in February. What are a couple questions, things you're intrigued to find out about this group that maybe you won't find out until you face other competition there for real starting in February that you think could be keys to the season?
I think we have a lot of depth. A lot of it might be inexperienced depth. And so I'm really excited to see how some of these players step into those roles and kind of just take them. A good example is like the Leach twins, Gabby and Alana. I mean, a couple of the best arms that I've seen and really have worked on their hitting game to add to the short game that they grew up with. And then have the tools, play tremendous outfield. But, again, they didn't get a lot of reps last year, so kind of inexperienced. Taylor Pannell played a ton last year, would have started for us the year before, but got hurt the first weekend and missed her entire freshman year. So she's been here 3 years, but this is really only year two, but, put up all SEC numbers last year. How does she step into that role of, okay, being that player that you're not just in the lineup, now you're kind of one of the go-to players. Same thing for like a Bella Fa. How does she respond to her freshman year, missing so much injured? You go around and like, I love the people that we have in different places and the potential for a really versatile lineup and a lot of movement in our lineup and different people who can do different things. But, really other than like Boo Gibson and probably Carlin Pickens. There's a lot of, there's not a whole lot of experience at the SEC level. But I'm excited for it because I think we have some people who are really going to step into those roles and shine.
It's going to be fun. We'll get to find out starting there in Clearwater when the season gets going in the NFCA Leadoff Classic. There's going to be a lot of eyeballs that weekend. A lot of eyeballs, as always, on your program throughout the season. Karen Weekly joining us here at In the Circle D1 Softball. Always a pleasure to talk to you about many topics, not just Tennessee softball, but softball in general, Coach. Great to always have you on. Thanks for taking the time from the busy schedule you always have to talk to us here on In the Circle and D1 Softball. Always a blast.
Well, you're one of the best, Derek. It's my pleasure. Thank you.